So I came into his room, and I told him immediately that I've brought a letter that Pran Kishore has written, and he wants me to read that to you. So he said, okay. And then I read that letter to him, and then I explained to him that, you know, he has sent this donation, and I've taken the kind of risky situation to change it already on the black market, a large sum of money. And then he said, okay. And then he actually had already closed the doors and the windows in his room, and his servant was there with him, Naveen Krishna Brahmachari, who later became Bhaktivedanta Madhav Maharaj. And so then I took the money and placed it. He was sitting up on his bed, and I was on the floor in front of the bed, and I placed all the money there, all the rupees. In those days we didn't have 500 rupee notes, so it was a large sum of rupees. And then after that he asked me, so how long will you be with us? And I said, well, I can be here for 3 days. After that I'm going to see Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj in Navadvip. He said, oh, very good. Very good. So tomorrow we are scheduled to go, because it was Ekadasi day, the next day, and they had scheduled a Parikrama with a small number of local Mathura Vasi devotees on a small bus to go to Govardhan and Radhakund. And so he asked me, he said, we are going tomorrow. Would you like to come? And I said, yes, very much. So, okay, we're leaving at such and such a time in the morning. And then that evening, Srila Narayan Maharaj gave class in Hindi language, and I attended the class. I didn't know practically any Hindi at that time, but still I sat and listened. And so the next day we went there for that program, for the Parikrama. We didn't actually walk around, we just took the vehicle, and we stopped at various places. We came to Radhakund and Shyamakund, and then after that we took prasadam. It was like a picnic type prasadam that the devotees had brought along in tiffins and so forth, and it was very wonderful. I sat next to Srila Narayan Maharaj. I was the only Westerner in that party, and I took prasadam sitting next to him. I got some of his remnants. So the following day after that, I came to Vrindavan with Naveen Krishna Brahmachari on the bus, and he brought me there to the place where the construction was going on, because Pran Kishore wanted to have photos so they could see what progress was being made. So I took photos there. And then I spent some time in Vrindavan during that day, and I went to Prabhupada's rooms in Radha Damodar, and I went to the ISKCON temple, Krishna Balaram Mandir, and Prabhupada's Samadhi and all. Then I came back to Mathura in the evening, and I also requested Srila Narayan Maharaj to pose for some photos that Pran Kishore also requested. So we came up on the rooftop, and Srila Narayan Maharaj sat in front of the tower of the temple, which was actually Sevakunj also in that tower. And there were tulsis around him, and he had a small table with Srimad Bhagavatam on the table, and he sat and posed, and I took many photos of him and brought those back to America.
I don't know when it was. I just arrived in Mathura, and maybe we arrived, I think, early in the morning. And Gurudev was giving darshan outside his room about 10 or 11 o'clock. So Gurudev was nice darshan, and he's coming back to his room, and he sees me, and he goes, "Oh, you're so red." He's like, "Have you put some red powder on?" And Gurudev was really laughing. And then Radhika was telling me that as Gurudev was speaking to me, my face just went redder and redder. And then he was speaking to Savita, And I never knew what he was saying, but he was saying something. And Radhika was telling me later, one time she told me that he said, oh, she has come from so far just to see me. But then recently she was saying to me that she was complaining to Gurudev that he was never there anymore. You know, he was always in the West, and, oh, Gurudev, you don't love me anymore, something like this. And he goes, but can you go this colour for me? and then he looked at me again, and then Gurudev went really serious, and he said, what will my daughters do if I don't come back to England again? And he goes, they may cry for me. And then he looked at me and he said, will you cry for me?
The Russian Radhika, she was learning Sanskrit. Her mum was really interested in her learning Sanskrit. And she was kind of like creating like a competition between us, like, oh, you should learn Sanskrit too, Srivasa. And I was not really interested. I was trying to learn Hindi, and that was just enough. And so I asked Gurudev, like, should I learn Sanskrit? And he's like, no need. You know, but you should learn Hindi. And so then I went to school to learn Hindi. It was, I think, yeah, he wanted me to be more in the mutt. Yeah, I remember one time I was kind of like, I didn't want to get really like involved with like the preaching or going out. I kind of like staying in the mutt and having my little routine. And I think Tirtha Maharaj took a bunch of the brahmacharis out to some town here nearby to do a bunch of preaching. And everybody was like outside getting ready to go, and I was just, you know, sitting calmly in the temple room watching them and, like, you know, chanting my rounds. And I turned around, all of a sudden Gurudev had come down from his room into the temple room, and he looked at me and he's like, what are you doing here? Like, go. And I'm like, I kind of hesitated. He's like, go, have experiences, do things, like, get out of this, like, you know, your little comfort zone. And I was like, oh, okay. And I like rushed downstairs and hopped on the bus, and it was like, didn't get back till like 2 days later, totally soiled and, like, you know, covered in dust. And but we'd been to like 6 different homes doing kirtan, Tirtha Maharaj speaking katha, and we did an amazing Nagar Sankirtan in the middle of the night, going from like place to place, drinking this like pink milky like Gatorade thing. It was, yeah, and it was like yeah, just like, you know, for just listening to Gurudev, to, okay, I can, you know, I just, yeah, he was right. Just go out and have experiences.
It took a while until we met Gurudev. We heard about him. Actually, at that time, my family and me, we were living in ISKCON, but we were so much unsatisfied with many things going on at that time. And Srila Bhaktivedanta Puri Maharaj started to travel and preach in Europe. He came to Italy several times. We met him. But we heard also that Narayan Maharaj exists. And but, you know, it was not internet time, so it was difficult to know. And then we heard that in 1999, Srila Gurudeva was coming to Italy. So all the devotees knew he was coming there. They knew where he was. But no one wanted to tell us where he was. Actually, he was very close to us, or then after a couple of hours away. But still, no one wanted to have troubles with ISKCON leaders, so they kept secret where Srila Gurudeva was. So we tried, especially when he arrived, he was there a few days. Every day we were trying to find out where several people, but no one told us until they told us where he was. By the time we were reaching him, he would have been already on his flight to South America. So Gurudev was in Italy, and we missed him. But still, my father was so determined to visit him and to get to know him. And we knew that that was around April, so in a few months he would have been in Holland. So we drove 14 hours from Italy to Holland, and we went to visit him. So it was actually most my parents, they wanted to see him and meet him. So we went there with some other devotees, with our neighbors, to see who Sri Narayan Maharaj is. But I wasn't actually so much interested in seeing him. I was 17 at that time, so for me it was more interesting to drive outside Italy, see Holland, and see something else. I was more attracted by Holland than from Gurudev himself, so that's how they got me there. And when we were there, so my father was really amazed and impressed by Srila Gurudev, and he wanted to take initiation from him. So he asked me that I also to take initiation. And actually I didn't really want, because I had some ISKCON guru that I liked, and this problem with ISKCON and Gaudiya Math. I was a teenager, so I didn't want to have troubles. And also a friend of mine was disciple of Srila Pradmanabha Maharaja, so I said, okay, I want also to meet him before. But then my father made a good point. He said, all these Vaishnavas are very, very old. So maybe by the time you can go and meet them, maybe they're already Nitya Lila. So you didn't miss only one, you missed three, and then you will cry. So I kind of agreed, and I said, okay, I will take Harinam from Gurudev, and then for Diksha I will see from who I will take. But then things went that everything was organized that I also take Diksha from Gurudev.
Same day.
Same day. I wasn't really agreeing with that, because I said, no, I want first to, meet Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj before I want something, but kind of everything that went that way. So I took initiation from Gurudev, and then in the evening, he was giving names during the class, after the class, it was before, I don't remember. But the nice thing was, it was time for Gurudev to give the names, and still I wasn't in my heart so sure of that was the real decision, was a good decision or not. I was still having so many doubts in my mind. And I remember that evening, the devotees were singing, the Kirtan Radha Kunda Tata, and there is on the lines very often Vilas, like Lila Vilas, like this. So I just put this in my mind. I said, okay, if Gurudev is my guru, then he will give me a name with Vilas inside. Yeah, and I didn't know why. And I was like, why am I saying this? And I said, okay, why I have to put Gurudev to try that he's really my guru? Anyhow, so Kirtan finished, Gurudev gives the name, gives to everybody. I was one of the last. Then they call me, and Gurudev gives the name, and this is Vilasini. And I remember I was standing there, I couldn't stop to look at Gurudev. Everybody was dragging my sari to sit again, and they couldn't understand why I was just staring at him. Yeah, and then I said, okay. So he took my heart in his pocket, and I said, okay, then that was the right decision.